Our radio program has been ongoing for over a year, and we have considered various aspects of the views of the conception of social safety, dead water, on the problems of man, society, and creation. Could you briefly describe the main basic provisions and concepts of the conception of social safety?
First of all, we should touch on the philosophical categories, since it's philosophy that is intended to generalize all elements of the worldview system and vest it with a complete form. In the views of the biblical conception, the world is four-united and is comprehended through the primary, ultimately generalizing categories: matter, energy, also understood as spirit or information, space, and time. If you and I try to list the main basic provisions, then I will name the first one: the triunity of being, matter, information, measure. In our understanding, the world is triunited, and being appears as a process of the triunity matter, information, measure. These internested processes, with periods from microseconds to billions of years, give all the diversity of creation. Time is a subjective parameter that arises exclusively in the human brain when he compares two different frequency processes taking place in creation. In nature, there is no empty box space, imagined by many, into which matter is placed. The physical vacuum is one of the varieties of matter, capable, as proven by physics, to generate its other forms. The viciousness of the understanding of the four-unity of the world proceeds at least from the fact that today the standard that reproduces the linear dimension through the wavelength of laser radiation is also suitable for reproducing time as a parameter inversely proportional to the wavelength. The consequence of the understanding of the four-unitedness of the world is the perception of it as a set of random phenomena, as a kind of kaleidoscope. In our understanding of the triunity, the world is one and holistic. All processes and phenomena in it are interconnected and are implemented within the framework of the matrix of possible states, i.e., endowed with measure. We do not agree with the fact that the history of humanity flows by itself, but we believe that the global historical process is governed by structural and structureless methods.
Now, we would like to hear the most significant provisions concerning precisely the questions of power and governance.
Let us name the second basic concept: conceptual power. We assert that the highest, all-encompassing level of social governance is conceptual power, as the power of ideas based on a certain understanding of the general course of civilizational development, and as the power of people who have comprehended and who incarnate these ideas. Legislative, executive, and judicial powers are equally enclosed on the six governorial priorities of this supranational system of structureless governance. The entire set of conceptually powerless parties, left, right, center, is a single mechanism in the hands of conceptual power, parties financed by it through different cashiers from one wallet. The third basic concept: priorities of generalized weaponry of conceptual power. The country which uses military weapons to ensure its security has not comprehended the methods of ensuring worldview safety. The more sophisticated and dangerous material weapons used against countries and peoples include genetic weapons, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and four types of information weapons: world money, ideologies, historical and methodological priorities of the generalized weapon of conceptual power. The USSR was destroyed without a single shot with the help of a green serpent, a green dollar, and a green bandage on the forehead of thoughtless provocateurs. The fourth basic component that is fundamental in our conception is the sufficiently general theory of governance. Real governance towards the country is possible only according to the entire function of governance. The principles of governance applied in the country, they wanted the best, but it turned out the same as always, indicate the absence of elementary views on the schemes of socially useful governance according to the entire function. To pose the tasks of governance, it is necessary to set the numerical values of the following parameters. 1. The vector of objectives of governance as an ordered list of particular objectives, where the most important objective is in the first place and the least significant one in the last. 2. The vector of the current state of the control parameters of the governance system, which characterize the current state of each of the particular objectives. 3. The vector of error of governance, which represents the difference between the vector of objectives and the vector of state, and characterizes the degree of dissatisfaction with respect to a particular objective. If the objective of development is set and tracked by the predictor, and the task of minimizing the vector of error is solved by the corrector, then we have a system of governance on the basis of the predictor-corrector scheme. The quality of governance, the efficiency or professionalism of the team of governors, are characterized by tendencies aimed at minimizing the vector of error of governance. In the sphere of the economy, the objective parameter that characterizes the high quality of governance is the tendency towards a decrease in the prices for goods that satisfy demographically conditioned needs.
I know that your analytical group has 4 books on theology.
You are absolutely right. Although the theme of the highest hierarchical encompassing governance permeates almost all our works. Therefore, let us note the 5th basic concept, God, the Creator and Almighty. Objective reality in the ultimately generalized sense is creation created by God, and God as a supra-mundane reality, the one Creator and Almighty for creation and all living on earth. The mission of all confessional faiths, without exception, is to replace understandings about true God with ideas about different doles of God, planted in every one of the nations, according to the principle divide and conquer. Pantheism perceives God not as a supra-mundane reality, but materializes him to the level of one of the properties of creation, that is, deifies the created material world.
Are there in your works any special views on a person, his psyche, his needs?
Yes, in these questions we also have our own certain basic concepts. So the 6th basic concept is types of psyche structure. The objective of the development of reasoning humans as a biological species is an ever more entire mastery of the genetically determined potential of development. However, many of the representatives of the species during their life do not develop in this sense, but degrade to an animal state, when the most important motive for all their actions and deeds are instincts of a sexual digestive character. Human development is not the accumulation of a certain stock of knowledge, but the perfection of the type of psyche structure. An educated and intelligent scoundrel with an anti-human psyche is socially much more dangerous than an undereducated person. When making decisions, a person can be dominated by 1. Animal instincts, 2. Habits, traditions imposed in society, behavioral stereotypes, 3. Cold calculation that violates generally accepted norms of behavior, 4. Intuitive insights and prompts of the soul coming from the unconscious levels of the psyche. In accordance with this, the types of psyche structure of man are classified as follows. 1. Animal type of psyche structure. 2. Zombie biorobot type of psyche structure. 3. The demonic type of psyche structure. And 4. The type of psyche structure, reasoning human. The 7th basic concept is demographically conditioned needs. The spectrum of man's needs is differentiated into precisely calculated, demographically conditioned, and unprognosable, degradationally parasitic needs. With the orientation of the sphere of production and services towards the first of them, it becomes possible to accurately calculate the vector of needs with a strict solution of the input-output balance equations arising from these boundary conditions. As you know, the Nobel laureate Vasily Leontiev, so to say, proved that the input-output balance equations do not have an unambiguous solution. His mistake was that he did not take into account the possibilities of orienting the tasks of state governance towards demographically conditioned needs.
And in what are the features of your views on the economy and its role in the schemes of social governance concluded?
The 8th basic concept is schemes of antisocial and socially beneficial governance. Ever since the time of Aristotle, there has been a strict delimitation between theories and algorithms of economic governance depending on the objectives being realized. At the same time, economy was understood as the rules of governance towards the national economic complex in the interests of the whole society. There was also a fundamentally different system of knowledge, crematistics, from the Greek word krem, wealth, within the framework of which theories and algorithms for the formation of wealth by a specific structure or certain entrepreneur were developed. Currently, the country does not have a scientific school of economics in its original understanding. All textbooks and theories developed in the country refer to crematistics, and they are named economic by mistake. In reality, the country does not have those deep economists, according to A.S. Pushkin, who would be occupied with the problem of the ways in which the state progresses. Everything is left to the mercy of the crematists, who are ravaging the state. Herewith, the instruments of antisocial governance, plundering of participants in productive labor, and building intersectoral imbalances are seigniorage, income received as the difference between the cost of production of paper or electronic banknotes and their face value. This income is not pan-national, but is taken over through private corporate methods, the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, private foreign money issuance centers, the US Federal Reserve System. Loan interest, an algorithm of legalized usurious plundering of international and domestic banking clans and corporations. Plundering of the people and the processing industry, destabilization of the national economic complex through continuous, outstripping promotion of tariffs of natural monopolies. Private cooperative taking over of national natural resources, gas, oil, timber, etc. Exchange of the supply of goods of the state for other people's paper or electronic means of payment. The essence of this operation, with the unidirectional movement of alien money supply, leads to primitive theft, bypassing consciousness, or at best, to resources goods crediting to the country, the issuer of modern means of payment.
The views on man, society, creation, which you describe, apparently always, at least fragmentarily, were present in the consciousness of society. With what do you connect the fact that it was at the turn of the millennia that this information received a systemized active promotion from below in all regions of Russia?
It happened in accordance with the law of time. So the ninth basic concept is the law of time. For the first time in the history of modern civilization, from 1910 to 1950, the constantly decreasing period of changing of technology was equal to the constant period of changing of generations, 25 years. The consequence of this is the collapse of the prevailing hermetic conception of governance, with an inevitable change in the core of governors and a change in the logics of social behavior. In biblical terminology, this period is called the apocalypse. Of the most significant, I would name one more basic principle of our system of knowledge. So the 10th basic concept is the principle of autosynchronization. Observing various biopopulations, the pseudo-Jretsut structures of ancient Egypt came to the conclusion that the autosynchronization mode is characteristic for any of them. It is expressed in the fact that if 5 to 10% of specimens of a certain species begin to do something synchronously, then the entire species is automatically transferred to this mode. This is typical not only of fireflies, a swarm of bees, a herd of horses, but also of human society. In order to implement global scenarios in a governed country, it is necessary to have an unquestioningly obedient governorial periphery, numbering 5 to 10% of the total population. The preparation of such a periphery was realized during the 42-year hike of Moses. It was the most global, savage social experiment that perverted the genetics of its participants.